Can anyone remember about that one?
No, sir, we didn't cover the functions.
We didn't cover the functions, right? I think this was the last assignment I gave you. Can you remember what we did here? We had to do a type conversion. Okay, so for those who did not complete this one, I want you to quickly do this one so you can refresh your memory. So the program here is to calculate the area of a circle using the radius. Earlier we used hard-coded values. That means radius was inside the program. So to change it, you have to change the program. Then I ask you to update it. So the value can actually be entered by the user. So this is the syntax to get the value from a keyboard input. Input is the syntax to get the keyboard input. Here you can put any text if you need it, that's optional. So it will print this one and then put a prompt asking you to enter a value. Then whatever that was entered will be assigned to this sum variable or whatever the variable you put on the left hand side. So right hand side, evaluate and assign to left hand side. Then you can use this variable for your calculations, right? So the calculation I need for this one is to calculate the area of the circle, right? So can you quickly do it and put the answer in the chat? Can you remember how we did it? Okay. Some of you might remember, some of you might not remember. So let's start by running it. Now there's a library that we can use to get the value of the phi. What is that library called? Can you remember the name of the library? There's a Python library that is used for mathematics. Unfortunately, I can't seem to hear. I think someone answered, but I can't seem to hear it. There's some.
NumPy.
Yes, NumPy library. How do you import a library? Now, this one obviously we need to get the pi. So to do that, we can do it. We can say import NumPy. Either we can use it directly or we can assign a small shortcut for this LP. All the library should be at the top. Then we need to get the value. We call it radius. Input. You can say please enter the radius. So let's put a backslash n. So it will be in a new line. Now if you run it, we will get the prompt. So like that, we can get the radius. You can check if we had actually received the value. Okay, value is there. So from that point onward, you have to calculate the area. So what is the code for that? Can you quickly answer that one and put the answer in the chat? How to find the area? So how do you calculate the area? What is the formula? Area is equal to what? If you know the radius of the circle, if you want to calculate the area, there's a simple formula. What is that formula?
Phi r square.
Pi r square. Very good. So we can say, we can get the pi from here. Then we can multiply by r squared. Will this work? Will this program work? What do you think? Will it work or not? When you run it, you will get a particular error. Why is there an error? If you look at it, it says this is the line with the error. What is the error? You can't have the power when one is a string and other is an integer. Can you figure out what's wrong with this one?
Because they think our input radius is as a string.
Exactly. So if you look at the data type here, let's print type radius. So be careful with the capital and simple. you get an error that's already there, but it print it as a string. So when you use the keyboard input like this, whatever you put here, whether it's a number or a text or whatever, it will be taken as a string. So we need to convert into something suitable. What is a suitable data type for this one? Suitable data type?
Float or double.
Float or double. Why not integer?
Because it can't get the decimal numbers.
Yes, integer will work if you have something like a number of students in the class or number of coconuts in this or something like that, where you have integers. But radius can have fractional part, right? So a better choice would be to float. Now with the float, there are no errors. You will get the correct result. If you want, you can do something like this as an area is. So you get this extra text as well. Okay, any questions regarding this one? This is how I think the last component we did in the previous day. Anything you want to know? Any problems? Do everyone understand this particular program? මේක තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් කියන්න මොකද ඉස්සරහට එන ටික ටික මීට වඩා එහාට යන්නේ. එතකොට මේක කරගන්න බැන්න ඉස්සරහ තව හිර වෙනවා. Right? Remember now, programming you have to do, otherwise you won't be able to learn. Just looking at my screen or just reading through the code or typing it after I'm writing the code is not going to work. Because programming doesn't happen in here. Okay. Programming happens in your head. When you are given a question, how to find the correct flow, what kind of functions you are going to call, what kind of statements you are going to write, in which order you are going to write. Those things should happen in your head. That is the actual programming. This is just the output of that processing. Okay. So what you see is the program. The actual learning is not here. It's in your head. So unless you try it, you won't learn it. If you are just looking at this program and just copy pasting, it's basically learning about typesetting, not about programming, right? So you have to try it. Okay, there's an error. Someone says type error. Oh, that's a problem I mentioned, right? We solved it by using this float. Using the float, you should be able to convert it to a proper. Otherwise, you are trying to multiply a string by a number. It's like trying to multiply a word with a number. That's not going to work, right? 3 into 5, that works. 3 into Sri Lanka is not going to work. One is a name and other is a number, right? Okay. Today we are going to learn another new concept that is called functions. What is a function and why it is important? Earlier we learned about variables, right? Now variables help you reduce the code, make it easy to update, manageable, and also easy to read the code. Because when you look at this code, you see, okay, it is radius times 2. If I put 10 or something here, you have no idea what this 10 is. But now looking at this code, you can get an idea what I am doing here, right? So it makes it more readable. But the fact is, variables are like placeholders. They just hold the values. They don't do anything. Just a placeholder. Functions do the same thing, but for active code, for a code. Let's say you have a particular calculation that needs to be done at multiple places, right? Maybe you have 3 values you want to find the largest value from these three. So you have written some code to do that calculation. And throughout your program, let's say there are 5 different places, you have to do the same thing. In those 5 places, you are provided with 3 numbers, you have to find the largest number. Now you can see the similarity. In the variables, you have the same number reused in different places. Here you have the same function or the same process or the same set of instructions that has to be repeated in multiple places. Earlier case, we used a variable for this, and for this one, we use something called a function. Functions allow you to replace repeating codes. So rather than writing the same code again and again, you can write it in one place and use it again and again. So let's start by writing our first function. Please log into your Google Colab and have a workbook. So this is the syntax for the function. First, you start by the keyword def. Def means the definition. Then you have to give a function name. The same rules apply as the variable names. You can't have spaces, you can't use keywords, you can't use numbers. All those rules also apply. Then you can give function name. Let's say my function is I'm just going to give some name, my first function. Yes, in my function. You can give whatever the meaningful name you can give it. For this one, I just put it like this, my function. Because this is the first one. Later on, you can put more meaningful names. Then you have a parenthesis followed by a colon. Sometimes you can have some values inside this parenthesis. Values in the sense you can have some variables inside here. But for this one, we don't put any variables because this is the starting one. We are starting from the beginning to learn about functions. Together, this is known as the signature of the function. Right? The name and whatever the arguments you pass into it. These are known as arguments, the things you pass into the function. After the function name, the parenthesis and the colon, you can run what you want to repeat, the function code. Let's start with a very simple one. Let's do a print. Hello. Okay. So now we have written our first function. Its name is my function. What it does, it print this particular text. Now, how do you run this? If you just run it like run all, or if you try to run it like this, nothing happens. Why? This is a block of code that we have given a special name. To use this block of the code, we have to first call it. We call it as calling. We have to say here, I need to use this particular function. Now remember, functions must be defined before they can be called. Function definition should precede the use of the function. So if I am going to use this function, it should be this cell or anything after this cell. You can't define a function here and use it at here. That's not going to work. The usage of the function should always be after the definition. Right? Let me try to put it in a new sheet so it will look less confusing, and otherwise I would have to type the radius every time I want to run the code. I'm going to a new Google sheet, put it here, and run it, nothing happens. If I want to use the function, I have to call it. How do I call it? By put in the function name. You can say my function and run it. See, now I'm doing it. So you might remember it's something very similar to this one. So this is also a function, but it's a built-in one. We didn't wrote it. It's already there in the Python library, in the Python language, right? It is similar. So what's happening here? The program gradually runs through this program. Let's say print start. Stop. It runs the line 1 first, which prints a star. Then it goes to line 2. It says my function. Then the program goes to where this function is. Okay, here's my function. It then run this one. That's here. After running this function, it returns to here and say print stop. Okay, print stops. So whenever you're calling a function, the program jumps to the definition of the function and start executing it. Okay. Firstly, I mentioned it usually runs in sequence, but there can be things like this. Usually run from one after another, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. But if you are calling a function, program automatically jumps to the place where the function is defined, like this, and start printing. Now you can call it multiple places. See, so I can do it here as well. Now, if I want to change this text, only thing is I need to change it here. Here's another important thing in Python. Now remember, the codes are written in different cells. Now I made a change in this cell, but let's say I forgot to run this cell. Instead, I run this one only. You can see nothing changes. Although I have set it as hello, it doesn't print hello, it prints my earlier text. The reason is, although I changed it, the Python doesn't know I changed it because I did not run this particular cell. If I did run this cell and then run this one, you can see the change. Or easier way would be to go there and say run all. Then it will gradually run all the things and come with a proper result. Right? That is important. So this function doesn't accept any arguments. That means you don't put any values there, it just print whatever is there. So let's make it a little bit different. So I'm going to rewrite this function to accept a number. Let's say num 8. And I am going to print twice the num 8. Or let's do a small calculation and print it. Let's say answer is 2 times 8. Okay, now I can run this. No errors. But if I try to run this one here, it will throw an error. Can you think why I am getting an error? Why do I get an error? Because this function is expecting a number here. But here I'm not giving any numbers. Right? So the signatures do not match. This function signature has this particular name, but also expect a single argument. Here the function name is there, but the argument is not there, so they don't match. I can match it by doing something like this. Now what happened? this line was printed. In the second line, you are calling the function. So it automatically jumps here. And you can see the first value is the 10. This one is also accepting only a single value. So number A is replaced by the value 10. Or you can think number A is assigned the value 10. Right? Basically like assigning the first parameter by this value. So the number is now 10. 10 times 2 is 20. So it prints the answer. Okay, is it clear? Now I want to modify a function so it accepts two numbers, something like this. And when you run this function, it should add these numbers and print. So when you run this program, it should add these numbers and print. So please write the function for this and also how you call the function. If you want, you can run it in the same cell, no problem. You can do it like this, no problem. But remember, Python use indentation to separate the sections. So after this definition, you can see these are indented. It is important. If you don't indent, it will not be part of the function. Now here, these are part of the function. This is not part of the function. This is my rest of the program. If you indent it, it will become part of the function. Right? So your main program, because I only made it a small change. So if you don't indent it, your function will not work. In the main program, you don't indent. In the function, you indent. Right? Right, now can you quickly do it? Modify your program so it will accept two numbers and add them. And when you finish, put it into the chat. Okay, some of you have done it. Others are still doing. Quickly do it. Uh, okay. You're going to add them. Now remember, this indentation is very important. Otherwise, your function will only execute this line. By indenting, you are saying all these blocks belong to this function, right? Other languages usually use parentheses or something, so it's very clear where this chunk or the block starts and ends. Python decided to go with the indentation method. Therefore, if you indent it, it belongs to whatever the block, that it started. If you don't indent it, it becomes a separate line. So here, both of these lines are indented, so both of them belong to this one. Let's say 20. I have to run all, otherwise this function will not get updated. Now I get 45. Right. Here you can see my function is not returning anything. That means it takes some numbers, do some calculation and print the result in place. Let's say I want to actually make some changes. I want to get the result from here and multiply it by 2. Something like this. So this function, I pass two values, numbers, it do some calculation, and then I want to get the result and print it. But here we have a small issue. Why? My function doesn't return anything. I am passing two numbers, it is doing the calculations, but after that it just prints. It doesn't give back anything to me. Right? It doesn't give back anything to me. So if I want to use it for further, if I want to assign it for another variable or something, my function should be able to return something. Right? So if I want to do that, I have to change this into a return word. Now return is a keyword. It should be the last statement in your function. Anything after the return will not work. They will not get executed, right? So return should be the last statement. So here I am passing values A and B. It do the addition and the result is returned. That means when you execute the function, this answer will be the result. It will appear here. Instead of this whole thing, this answer value will be here. It will be assigned to the variable X. So now when you run this one, you can see I'm getting a value. Okay, there's a it says indentation error expected on indented block. Okay, there's a problem faced by student, so I'm just going to copy paste it and see. what it looks like. So if you are doing it like this, you have to put the indentations. And now when you call the function, it should work. It's working. So I'm not sure what's the error you are getting here. Maybe you have put it like this. Then it will get an error. The reason is after the function naming, it expects something to do. You can't have blanks. You need to have at least one statement. Right? If you put it like this error will be gone, but this print statement will not be executed because it's not part of the function anymore. So it's not sure what this answer is. Because in this mode, this is the function, this is something else. So this answer, it doesn't know. Anything inside the function, you can't access directly. That's again an important thing. So I'm actually explaining to one of the questions in the chat. So others don't get confused. If you have anything inside the function, like this answer or whatever the variables, you can't access it from the outside. Only way for you to access it is through this kind of return function. You can have something like global variables, but that's beyond our scope. So the best way is to return it, whatever the value you want, and then access it from there. Now I want you to do another exercise. You might remember we did exercise to get the radius from the user and then calculate the area. Now I want you to do it, but this time use a function. Create a function to calculate the area of a circle when the radius is given. So you can pass the radius into the function and it will return the area. Right? Modify your code to include that and put the answer in the chat. Very good. Most of you have done it. Okay, so let's move to the next topic. If you have any questions regarding the functions, put it in the chat, so I will answer. But so far, the answers I have seen is correct. Except one. I3 Kusnam. The same issue, indentation error. Same person, same issue. Now remember, in other languages, you might have seen things like this one. If you have a function or something, some other languages usually do something like this. This clearly indicates where this function starts and where it stops. Python doesn't do it. Python doesn't have parentheses. So instead, they use indentations. So if you're getting an indentation error, that means you have not properly marked the starting and the end of the blocks. So whatever you want to put inside the block should be indented. Okay. Right. So now we have learned about functions. Answer is not defined, then probably you might have put it like this. If you put it like this, it will throw an error. Right? Here also it will throw an error. So and other thing is, when you're calling a function, make sure you have to put the parentheses. You can't just ignore it and say something like this. You must put the parentheses. That's another error I see in one of the persons. Right? If you are passing any parameters, you have to put the parameters inside the parentheses. If you are not passing any arguments, even then you have to keep a blank parenthesis. Otherwise, it will not work. That's how Python understands it's not a variable, it's a function. By putting the parenthesis, it understands you are calling a function. Okay, I think it should solve all the problem. Now let's look at another topic, which is about different data structures. We have so far learned about that student. If you still getting that error, please put it in the chat so I will look into it. So far we have looked at variables, and variables can only store a single value. It can be a number or a some string or character or some Boolean value, but only one. But sometimes you want to store multiple values. Let's say you want to store the marks of this class. Let's say there are 50 students. Then if I want to import that one, you have to create 50 different variables like A, B, C, then maybe A, B, B like that. It's a problem. Creating variables is a problem, and also working is a problem. For example, if you want to calculate the average, you have to say A plus B plus C plus D plus like that up to 50. It's a mess. Therefore, we have some structures that help you create multiple values under a single variable name. So now we are going to learn about some of them. Okay, student has said a problem. You are still having some issue, right? Other thing is you can't import something inside the function. Import should be the very top. It should be at the very beginning. You can't import, don't import things inside the function, put it at the very top. And the second part, that's correct. You are trying to, now this is for a particular student's question, okay? Don't confuse it with the data structures. In the line 4, you are saying print within parentheses answer or ANS. But where is this ANS? It's not there. Now I mentioned whatever inside the function, others can't see. Whatever is inside the function, only that function or content inside the function can see. Think of function is like a room. You put some goods into there, something happens, and then you get some manufactured products out from it. What type of machineries or boxes or variables that are used inside the function, you don't know if you're outside. You can't access them from the outside as well. If you are from the outside, that means outside the function, only thing you can is you can either give the raw materials and accept the result. You can pass the arguments and get the return value. You can't break into the room and try to grab a box with a variable name. Similarly, you can't access into a function and get a variable from there. Right? So here, when we are defining it, we define somewhere inside the function, we defined a variable called answer, and we did some calculation. However, that is only accessible inside that function. If there are some calculation inside that function, they can access that answer variable. But outside it, you can't access it. Right? Only thing that you can access from the outside is the what is returned from the function. Now, when you return something from the function, they don't have the variable name. Right? They don't have the variable name. So instead of the function, you simply get whatever that value that is returned. So if you're returning a value 10, when you call the function, you have a value 10 instead of that function name. So if you want, you can assign it to another variable and use it. Okay, so that's something you have to test. If you're still having issues, let me know. Now I think it's okay. Now it should work. Right, so I was talking about storing multiple values under a single variable name. So there are different ways you can do it. Other languages mostly use arrays, but things like MATLAB use matrices. But in Python, we call them as list. Mostly list. There are some other structures as well, like tuples and dictionaries. They are more or less the same. So here's a summary. A list can store a set of items under a single variable name. Here I have something called fruit list. And for the fruit list, I am assigning 3 strings, 3 names: apple, banana, and cherry. Now take a closer look. I am using square brackets. That's important. Don't use parentheses. Each of these have their own meaning. If you are having a list, they should be under the square brackets. So this fruit list has 3 items. Each of them are called items. 3 items: apple, banana, and cherry. Lists can have multiple items, 0 items, 100 items, and if needed, they can have mixed items as well. That means some of them are float, some of them are integers, some of them are string. If you want, you can mix them as well. Here, all 3 of them are strings. Strings are basically like any variable. You can create them, delete them, change them, manipulate them, add them, do whatever you want. Now, tuples, on the other hand, are immutable. That means they are only read-only. You can't change them. Why do we need it? There are some specific cases where you don't want to change. For example, let's say days of the week. You create a variable called days of the week. You don't want anyone to change it. So you create a tuple and say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, like that, because you know nobody's going to change it. Right? But in list, you can change them. Tuples and lists are ordered. That means you can say first item, second item, third item, like that. You have an order. Right? You can say, give me the fourth item, give me the second item, because they have a particular order. Sets are unordered. Sets, you might have learned in mathematics, it's basically a collection of elements. You don't have particular priority or precedence. All of them are considered to be in the same value. So in a set, you can't say, give me the first item. There's nothing like first or second. Everything is in the same set. I'll show some examples. Dictionaries are basically a key value pairs. So let's get some extra details. That is the summary. Here's how you create a list and a tuple. If you are creating a list, you use square brackets. If you are creating a tuple, you use parentheses. If it's a set, you use curly braces. In sets, order is not important, so there's nothing called index. Index means the place in the list or a tuple. Like first person, second person, next person, like that. You have an order. That order is called the index. So there's no index. And duplicate values are ignored. You can have duplicate values, but only one will be shown. Right? And they can contain different data types. However, sets have one advantage. You can use set operations like union, intersection, inverse, like that. And the dictionary, latest Python versions have ordered dictionaries. Earlier ones didn't. They are a little bit different because you have key value pairs. So you have something like this, where you have the name, key, and a value. Key and a value. So if you want to get the brand of this one, you give this dictionary name and the key. Then it will give you the value for it. If you want the year, you give the key and it will give you the value. Now dictionaries, you can change the values. They are mutable. And the values can be other data types as well. But we will be mainly using lists. So let's focus on that. Right? They are very similar to arrays. They are changeable. You can have duplicate values. They are ordered. Ordered means you have first value, second value, like that. So the place in the list is named by an index. Right? So if you have a student register, let's say ordered by alphabetical number, alphabetical order, you have first student, second student, third student, like that. Similarly, a list have first item, second item, third item. However, there are two main conventions. Some programming languages name the first item as index 1, second item as index 3, index 2, third item as index 3. Other convention is you give the first item as 0. You start with 0, not 1, 0. Second item then become 1, third item become 2. That second method is called the zero-based indexing, because your first item start with the index of 0. Earlier method is called one-based indexing. Your first item is given a 1. So those two methods are based on different programming languages. In Python, we have a zero-based index. So that means in a list, first item is actually labeled as 0th item. Your numbering goes from 0 onwards, not from 1, 0 onwards. Right. So let's first create a list and see what we can do. I'm going to create a new notebook. And let's create a list. My list. And let's give apple, banana, and Here you can run it. So you can do with me. Nothing happens. If I did something like this, print my list, I will get the items. You can see 3 items are printed. But if I want, I can give only one item. For example, if I say my list 0, that means I am referring to this item. Because remember, this is 0-based index. This is index 0, index 1, index 2. So if I do something like this, I get an apple. If I do something like this, I get a cherry. Right? So this is how you call an item from the list. And let's say I want to get the size of my string. Then I can say print length my list. It should give me the size of my list. Now it says 3 because we have 3 items. Is it clear? Lists you can think of like variables as well. Only difference is when you want to call a particular item, you have to give the list name and the index. So if I want to call a particular value here, item here, it's just like using a variable. Instead of using just x or my value, I am saying my list followed by the index. So similarly, I can update values. I can say my list. Now you might remember how I update variables. I can say exercise 10, right? Same scenario, but instead of saying x, I'm going to say my list, and I have to tell where I am going to update. Let's say 0. Assign watermelon. So you can see the similarity between these two statements, right? Almost same. Only thing is, instead of a simple variable, I have the list name followed by the index. So now if I print this one, print my list, you can see it is changed. I have successfully updated it here. Sometimes I want to call more than one item. Then I can use this one. Let's say 0:1. Sorry, why is that? So here I am calling item of 0 and 1. Now remember, this is a, I'm not sure whether I have discussed it. This is called a range. In ranges, there's a small asymmetry in the ranges. If you do something like this, it will include the starting number, but will exclude the ending number. It will start from 5, but end with 9. Okay, I think I have to use the range command for that one. So here, if you try to do something like 0 to 2, it will include the 0th item and the first item, but it will not include the second item. Okay. Right. So let's say if you want to assign not one but multiple items to something, then what you can do is you can assign multiple items same time. Let's say my list. I want to update 1 and 2. So that means I'm selecting the first indexed and the second index one. And for them, I'm assigning 2 more new items. Let's say orange and carrot. Let's print this one as well so you can see the difference. You can see my this first index item and the second index item had been changed to these 2 new values. Okay. If you want, you can append items into them as well. For this, you can do something like this. You can say insert, then you can give a place. Where do you want to insert this one? So you can see now it is inserted here. In the first example, we just replace item. Here we are keeping the item and inserting a new item to the list. Let's try another example. Here I'm trying to add 2 lists. This is my list 2 and this is my list 1. I can say list 3 is equal to list 1, list 2. You can see it appended or it inserted the second list to the end of the first list. We created a new one, right? If you want to remove something, you can use the remove keyword. Say I have the list. Look at the list 1. So remove. Then I can give the whatever the name of the item I want to remove. So here I don't have to find where this item is. It can be anywhere. I can just say remove this item from the list. If you know the index and if you want to remove something from the index, then that is also possible. Then what you can do is you can say delete list 1. Then we can say 2. You can see the same result, but done in two different ways. This one, I have to give the what the item is. Here, I am just giving the location or the index, right? So these are some of the things you have to know because we need to do it. We need to use them in the future upcoming lectures. So I will give you a few minutes to try these things. And when you finish, either raise your hand or put the result, put it in the chat that you have completed, so I can continue to the next section. Okay, now quickly try these things because manipulated list is an important topic. Okay, any problems? This is just a demonstration, so I believe everyone were able to do it.
So, how to select the first component and the last one? As example, apple and cherry.
Then you
For
have
the,
to select it twice, because if you're using a range, it will be a consecutive set of items.
is
So
there
I
any method to select as a directly to one first array and the third array?
One and the last, right?
Yes.
There's one function called n, but I have not used it like the way you have mentioned, but we'll give a try. Mhm. Think it's minus one. No, nothing comes into mind. Probably you will have to do it in twice. You have to select the first item first, like this, and for the last item, you have something like, if I remember, you can use the end something. Yeah, end is for the MATLAB. There's something with a colon. No, nothing comes into mind. You have to give it a try. Right. So let's move to the next one. Not the next one, same thing, but different idea. Now imagine this scenario. I'm saying x assigned 10, y assigned x. Then I'm going to say x is update the x. Then I'm going to print y. So what will be the result of this one? So what is your expected result for this particular code? Can you put it in the chat?
10.
10. Others? අනිත් අය කියන්නේ කීයද මේ ගන්න උත්තරේ? 10. Okay, we'll run it and see. 10. Very good. Now I'm going to change this into a list. Okay. And list you can't just assign it like this. So I'm going to say just a 0 item. Then 15, let's say coconut. The same scenario, right? Now, what are the items you expect for the Y? What do you expect to get for the result here? What will you get as printed results? Someone says coconut, banana, and cherry. Now remember, I am printing y, not the x. I made the change to the x. Use this coconut, banana, and cherry. Now, doesn't it looks different? Whereas immutable, if you're using getting immutable, probably you have used you have used parenthesis instead of square brackets. Okay. So now for you, it should look a little bit odd, right? Why? Now you have assigned something for x, then you assign it for the y. So now y should have apple, banana, and cherry. You are never touching the y, you are only changing the x. See, you are not changing y, you are only changing x. So how come when you change the x, y automatically get changed? I mean, after that, if I had something like y assign x, we can understand. But assignation was done early. After that, we are only changing the x, not the y. So this is again some strange twist in Python. The thing is, if you just do a list assignation, now if you look at the early example, the previous one, we had something like this, right? Here what happened was you had the variable x set to 10. Then when you say y assign x, the value 10 was copied to the y. Now you have two variables with value 10. They are independent. So you can change the x without changing the y. Right? They are not linked with each other, right? You have two variables. At some point you assign one into another, but that's it. There are no interconnections. You assign 10 to x, then you assign x to y, but then you have a separate copy for y and a separate copy for x. You can change them independently. But for a list, that doesn't happen. You have created your first list called x. Then here you are not actually making a copy. In this one, you are making a copy, but here we are not making a copy. So what's happening is, it is keeping this original list and creating a pointer to this set of values. So this list actually is not belong to x or y. It's somewhere in the memory. And here I am saying create a link to this particular list and label it as x. So you have these three items and x is linking into this one. So whenever I want to have some, whenever I want to call x, x is actually linking to this particular place in the memory. And when I'm saying y assign x, I am not getting a separate copy. I am just creating a new link to the same all three items, the same memory location. So you have this particular one, particular memory location. And the two variables are actually pointing to the same item. So when you make a change to this item, it is going to be reflected by both of these variables because you don't have separate copies. You have only one copy and x and y are just links pointing to that single copy. Right? So x is pointing to the same thing, y is pointing to the same thing. Through the x, you can make a change to the original one, but that change will be reflected to the y as well, because when you access it through the y, you are accessing the same item, right? So when you do it like this, you can say I am only thinking of changing x, but it happens to be y also changed, right? Now this can be a problem. Sometimes you want to have two different lists and you want to manipulate them separately. Then what you can do is you can, rather than just assigning it like this, you can use something like a copy function. I might need to import a library for this one. We'll see. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I can't remember. So what you can do is you can say copy. Again, there are two different copy layers, shallow copy and the deep copy. We will have to use the deep copy. Deep copy. And then we can say X. Okay, we have to import a library. So we will import it at the top. Usually importing the library should be done at the top. Okay, I'm going to import the copy library and run it. You import it, you run it. Now we run it. Now you can see X and Y are two different things. You can see X has this and Y has this. But earlier it was not like this. If you just assign it, you can see both X and Y are the same because they point to the same object, same memory location, right? So if you are manipulating lists, it's better to do a deep copy, otherwise you might get unexpected results. Okay, any questions? No. Right. Now we are moving to the last few sections of the Python learning. Conditional, or let's say in general, we call it as the flow control. Earlier we learned that program is a set of statements or instructions. Usually they start from the top and go one after another. You execute it one by one. First one, second one, third one, fourth one, like that. We learned one exception, that is the functions. Sometimes go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sixth one is a function call. Then you don't go to the seventh one. 6 will immediately jump to somewhere else in the program where that function is defined. It will execute that rest of the function and come back and then start from 7, 8, 9 like that. So that's one exception. You don't go line by line. There are some jumps to other places in the program. So these are called flow structures. There's another flow control structure that allows you to skip some of the statements. Now, if you're always skipping that set of statements, then you don't need to write it. So skipping is useful if you have a particular condition. You can say, okay, if this condition is satisfied, don't run this part of the program. Run this part of the program. If the condition is not satisfied, you can run this part of the program. Right? Something like that. So that is called conditional conditions or branch. Here's how you write a condition. The most common condition in Python is the if condition. Right? We can say A is 10, B is 20. Then I can put a condition. I can say if it's a keyword, B is larger than A. Print so this is a simple program with the if condition. Now, if you look at it, first two lines are nothing special, just assigning two numbers. Here we have a condition, if. This is the syntax for the if followed by a condition. Now here I'm asking you to check something. Check whether B is larger than A. So it can be true or it can be false. After that, I have a chunk of code. This code will only execute if the condition is true. What is the condition? B greater than A. If this condition is true, this block will be executed. You can see I have indented it. The reason is this is something that is inside the if condition. If you put something like, okay, first we'll execute it and see if this condition is true, do this. If this condition is false, this is not going to work. This line is not going to be executed. So when you run it, you can see this line is printed, that means code is executed. But if I change it to, let's say, 0, now you can see the condition is false. So if I run it now, nothing happens. But remember, if I put something like this, and indent it here, can you see what's going to happen? This is executed, this is executed. This is the if condition block. This is after the if block. So it's going to print hello. Why? This condition is not satisfied. So this block is not executed. However, this is not part of the if condition because this is not indented. So this is the last line of the if condition. Anything after that is something separate. If I put something like this, now both of these lines are inside the if condition. Why? You can see both of them are indented. So now if I run this program, you can see only this line is printed because both of them belong to this one. And if I change it to something like this, you can see this is printed because the condition is satisfied. This is printed because this is under the same if condition. This is a generic statement outside the if condition. So this one executed, this one executed, conditionally executed. This is executed whether you have a if or not. Right. So that is the if condition. There are other comparisons you can do with the if condition. It doesn't always has to be a greater than sign. So here's an example. So here are the other conditions you can apply, logical conditions you can apply with the if condition. You can check whether they are equal. Now remember, don't put a single equal sign. Some people mistakenly do it because in maths, when you want to compare it, you put equal sign, right? But here in the programming languages, single equal sign means assignation. You are not trying to see whether they are equal. If you mistakenly put a single equal sign, you will assign B into A, not a comparison, right? So make sure to use double equal signs. This is not equal sign, less than or greater than, no equal. These are the four conditions. Right. Quickly do the example I mentioned, then I will tell you how to add the else condition. Okay, that's how to do the else part. Yes, I will do it. That's the next part. Let's do this one and raise your hand when you finish, then I can move forward to the else part. Okay, while we are at it, I'm sending a Google Form link to the chat because we are supposed to take the attendance. I'll check with the Zoom list as well, but it will be much easier if you can just fill your name and the registration number in the Google form. Okay. So let's look at how to find an else situation. How do you write it? Meanwhile, fill that Google form as well. let's say I want to print something. If this is not true, if the condition is true, you do something. If the condition is false, you do something else. So if you're doing something else, then use the keyword else. Else, then again, and put something like this. Here we can see this one is satisfied, this one is not. If we change it, now this one is not printed, but this is printed. So only one of these will be executed. If you want, you can make it even more complicated. Not complicated, break into more steps. You can have a bunch of else if conditions. What is meant by that? You can have between if and the else. So this is the important thing. Between the if and the else, you can have something like else if. We call it as elif. Followed by another new condition. Say b is equal to a. You can have multiple ones like this if you want. Here's how it is going to work. This is important, so listen very carefully. It's going to first check the if condition. The first if condition. You always start with the if condition. If the first if condition is satisfied, that means the condition in the line 4 is satisfied, it's going to run whatever the block under it. Here you have only line 5. If you want, you can have multiple lines. It will run whatever the blocks under that and exit the if condition. It will directly jump to the line 16 here. It will not care about anything after that. Any code inside that else block, it will not care. Once the fifth, this one is satisfied, it will skip all these things and jump directly back into the line 16 or to the next starting point of the main program. It will skip all the else ifs, elses, and everything. Let's say this condition is not satisfied. Then it will go to this one. First elif condition and check it. If it is satisfied, it will do whatever under it. For example, printing at measure at line 8, and then again jump outside the if condition directly into the printing hello. Let's say you have some more else conditions. So this is false and this is false and this become true. Then it will execute this and directly jump out from the if condition. So like that, it will go one by one. If any of the conditions become satisfied, it will do whatever mentioned under that block and then jump out from the if condition. It will go directly back into the main program. Let's say everything become false. First if condition become false, then first elif become false, second elif become false, everything become false. In that case, this last else statement will get executed. That means if none of the above conditions are satisfied, then this will work. This line 15 will be executed. For the else one, we don't write a condition. For the else, we don't write a condition. Else means if nothing happens, if none of the above is true, then do this. There's a question, where's the Google form? That is, link is in the chat. So I'm sharing it again. So here, else will be executed if none of the above is true. So the way this program is written, either first one will work, or the second one, or the third one, or the fourth one. It goes like this. If none of them executed, the last one will work. So only one of them will be executed, and at least one and only one of the statements will be executed, right? So that is how if and collections of else if and the else will work. So you can have more than this. You can have a lot of else if here, but remember the order. If this one is become true, it will not check whether this is also true. The moment this become true, it will execute what's under that block and exit it. So although these might be true conditions, none of them will be checked. None of them will be checked. Now I am going to give you a small exercise. Right? Here's the exercise. There's another method you can do this one using logical operators. I haven't covered it, so don't use them for this one. I want you to do it using if and else if condition. Right? Here's the thing. From the user to enter the marks, you can get it from the keyboard input. If the marks are less than 20, you must print it as fail. 20 and less than 40 C, 40 and like that, you got the idea, right? So the student should be graded based on the marks. Now quickly do it and put the answer in the chat. Don't use nested conditions or logical operators. I will cover them later. For the moment, I want you to focus on if, elif, and else. There's a question in the chat saying the Google link is not visible. Can you see the link now? Is it visible or is sorry, I have been pasting it not for everyone. I have been pasting it for here. Now it should work. Is it visible now? Yeah, okay, good. Now I want you to try it as well. Put different marks and see whether you are getting the correct answer. So run it, and if you are getting an error, you better correct it. Some of the programs I get in the chat, I'm not sure whether they will work. Okay, so it's 3:30, so I will stop for today. So if you haven't done this one, try to do it at your home. And also check the rest of the PowerPoint as well. I will cover the rest. I think we can cover it in 1 hour about the loop structures and random numbers. But if you come prepared, that will be useful. And also do a little bit of practicing about programming, because that's the only way you can learn how to do the coding. Then we shall meet on the next week. If there are any questions, please put to the chat. Otherwise, we can wind up today's lecture.